In this video, we'll be going over the bottom-up constant space approach of House Robber 2. Let's go over the thought process. So in the array bottom-up approach, in each of the iteration, we are only relying on values from indices i+1 and i+2. This means we can create two variables to represent these two values. Then we can update these. Then in each of the iteration, we will update these two values or variables. Now let's go over the pseudocode. So we'll still validate the input parameter. If the array is empty, there are no houses, so we return 0 as the amount of money we can get. If nums.length is equal to 1, there's only one house, so we only return the amount of money in the one house. Then we're still going to create a method to find the maximum amount of money. And then what parameters do we need? We need the starting index and the end index and our input array. Now in the method, we're going to create two variables. The first one is m2, the maximum amount of money at i+2, and m1, the maximum amount of money at i+1. Then we're going to iterate through from start to end, or end to start, denoted as I. And then we're going to create a variable money, or m, and set it to the larger value between robbing the current house. If we rob the current house, it's m2 plus the amount of money at the current house, or just skipping the current house, which is just jumping to index i+1. Now we want to update these two variables as we move forward. So I want to update m2 to m1 and update m1 to m. Then we can return m1, which is the maximum amount of money if we start at start index, the starting index. We want to invoke the method for index 0 to get m1, so our starting index is 0. If we start at index 0, we are not allowed to rob the last house. This means the last house we can rob is at nums.length -2, and then we also want to invoke the method for index 1 to get m2, and then our starting index is at 1, and then this means we start robbing from the second house. This means we can rob the last house. And then we want to return the larger value between the two initial choices. Now what's the time and space complexity? For the time complexity, we still get 2n because we perform 2 for loops, and our space complexity gets changed to O of 1. Now let's go over the code. So we'll still validate the input parameters, and then want to return the larger value between the two starting choices if we start at index 0 or if we start at index 1. Now we need to update this helper method. So we're going to create two variables, m2, which is the amount of money at i+2, and m1, which is the maximum amount of money at i+1. Now in each of the iteration, for end to start, we're going to create a variable money and take the larger value between if we rob the current house or if we skip the current house. And then we're going to update the variables. m2 is equal to m1 and m1 is equal to m. Then we can return m1, the maximum amount of money if we start at this index. Let me know if any questions in the comment section below.